Hey guys, how are we today? Here we are again for another live stream with the GetBlok team, Dark Cave Miners. Here we come at you. It's been a pretty eventful week for you guys.
Yes, that it has. It's been a whirlwind for sure, and I think we're finally getting out of it. I think we're getting in front of everything right now, and we'll start to put all of this behind us. But yeah, it's been an amazing week, and it's we're here to tell the story. So
Yeah, it's like a sort of double-edged sword, isn't it? You're a victim of your own success, and it grew quite fast. I think you'd like to say as well. Things got a little out of hand in regards to the growth of the subpooling and the hash rate.
yeah, I mean, I think we call it the YouTube effect, right? So we had obviously Son of a Tech and Rabid Mining. They found some interest in what we were doing with the subpooling and with the neta mining and dual assets and all that stuff, right? So I think it brought a lot of attention, and the word got out there pretty quickly. Miners jumped on. I think there was also some profitability to be made, right, versus some of the other coins that were out there. So yeah, we saw quite an influx. I think at our peak we were at just about 1.5 terahash before we
Wow.
started having our challenges.
So, just want to give us a little bit of a recap on that. I know you did your Twitter space last night, and that was really informative and gave the community a really good overview. Just want to sort of touch on what sort of happened from the infrastructure side.
Yeah, sure. Let's turn that over to All Cloudy. He can kind of give a high level overview. He is the one that kind of handles our cloud infrastructure for the mining pool, so he can go into a little bit detail about that.
Sure, sure. So yeah, thanks for having us, CW. Yeah, so you got to think about from an infrastructure. Most miners don't know, and nor should they care, right? You turn on your rigs, you point into a mining pool, and then it just all works, right? You see your pending balance, and then at some point in time, you get paid into your wallet. Like that's how it should work. The reality behind the scenes, and any mining pool, especially the large ones, they spent years perfecting the aspect of really three categories, which are always a challenge. One, how do you scale globally to a point where you're closer to your miners based on your geography and where they are in the world, and to give them the lowest latency, because that's very important, right? So it's a race to who submits that share that's going to find a block, before somebody else around the globe, right? In kind of nanoseconds, milliseconds. So, the challenge is how do you scale that to a point where it's sustainable enough, it's highly available, but you're not bankrupting yourself because it's expensive to deploy infrastructure. Secondly, how do you process payouts, right? So, we are a smart pool, and Karat's going to go into that a lot more detail. But how do you process it considering all things around the limitations of the blockchain? Talk about Ergo, talking about the confirmation period, how long it takes for a transaction to be confirmed, et cetera, right? And then the third piece, which call it the third leg of the stool, is the user interface, right? So miners are addicted, as we all are miners, right? We're addicted at stats. We
Yeah.
want to go and hit that refresh button to see, has anything changed, right? And so you multiply that by, 1,000, 1,500 miners, and then you add on to the effect, there might be some malicious actors out there who are just trying to spam you. We see that all the time in our backend trying for brute force attacks. So that drives a pressure on the infrastructure, right? So what we've had, we always had it architected in a way that can be scalable, but always the weakest link is the challenge, right? So we ran into, very specifically, took a while for us to track it down, but it was really kind of a combination of two things. One, the mining software from a mining pool perspective we use is open source. We modified it quite a bit to fix issues, perform the way we wanted, and do smart contracts. We found that a lot of the persistence backend just wasn't designed for a lot of concurrency in inserts and updates and queries from users and from miners, right? And so there's a lot of deadlock that was happening behind the scenes that was kind of backing up, creating a queue of what people were querying the system for. Secondly, we also found that we depend on an infrastructure called Content Distribution Network, or CDN. So it's very common in cloud architectures, and we are cloud-based. That allows you to cache some of the content that is most often requested by users. And the balance is not making it too long that people are seeing out-of-date stats, but not too short that you're hammering your backend. We ran into a problem with some of our endpoints that are out there globally. It's very similar to what Netflix does, right? So, you turn on your phone or your TV at night, you want to play a video that's in 4K, magically it just plays in 4K. Well, it's because they push that content closer to your local telco, your local ISP, so that it's close to you. You don't have to go across the globe to fetch that data. So, we ran into a problem, and that caused a lot of issues in the UI. People are seeing unexpected errors. They're trying to query. So long story short, it took a while between Friday, Saturday, Sunday this past weekend to kind of narrow that down, scale things out, solve some of the problems with our service provider. And then now, knock on wood, we think we're pretty good and we can handle more volume. So that's in a nutshell, really what happened. I'll let the payout stuff be discussed. I think Karat can explain that a lot better than I can.
Yeah, sure. It's a really good insight to be able to be provided all that information that you just gave out, because like you said at the start of your discussion just then, it's the miners just want to sort of point their rigs to a pool and, like you said, get your payouts and happy days.
Right.
To hear about the infrastructure that goes on behind the scenes to make everything sort of happen and bring in these sort of milliseconds and microseconds around shares and who actually hits that block, bringing all that together for a pool is pretty big. And having all that infrastructure tie in together, it's massive. So I think that side of things are often overlooked, and it's great to have that insight. I'd just like to have a bit of a shout out here to DJ Mines as well. G'day, mate. Thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, so I think one of the things people don't realize, there's no blueprint out there of how do you run a mining pool at scale. There isn't, right? There's not like a go-to guide that somebody can go and start. There's pieces of it, right? You can know, how do you start up an Ergo node? Okay, how do you start up a Stratum? Okay, so then you kind of navigate those things, but then how do you create a UI? How do you make it scalable? How do you make sure that it doesn't crash the first time somebody tries to attack it, right? How do you make it secure, right? So that it can't be penetrated and then be modified and somebody can inject the wrong share. So all these things takes time. And we've been doing this since, what is it, Rob? End of last year, beginning of this year.
October, yeah, it was kind of when we started this journey.
Right, and so we learned a lot. And the great thing is, especially with the Ergo community, we got a lot of help from our users, right? They kind of provide feedback, constructive feedback. They told us, this is not right, this is right. Here's a discrepancy on payouts, and we fixed those things, right? So, but this was a pretty, I measure a lot of statistics. I have a whole dashboard that kind of tells me how we're handling things. And it was, literally a chart just went up like this vertically within hours, right? The YouTube effect, right? So it took a bit for us to kind of figure out where the bottlenecks were, but I think we're in a better place. We learned a lot, and thankful for our community for hanging out with us.
Yeah, I think a good little indicator of that is on your dashboard itself on GetBlok.io with the hash rate going parabolic. Just goes hand in hand with the users and everything else along those lines. So Karat, you're the man behind the scenes, the brains behind the scenes also. Do you just want to give us a little bit of a rundown on the undertaking it took to sort of sort out the payouts and all that sort of thing?
Right. So kind of to start off with, the old way we did payouts, it was scaled in such a way that it was sort of scaled horizontally, is how I think of it, in that we could do multiple payouts for different pools at once. And that was working fine up until we got a huge amount of hash rate, which all ended up going on the anetaBTC pool. So with that in mind, if all the hash rate is on that pool and they keep on getting blocks and blocks and blocks, what was it, maybe like 2 to 3 blocks an hour, and we were paying it out at maybe like 1 block an hour. So very quickly we saw that things were starting to get away from us. We were trying to pay out quickly, but we were just mining too quick. So it's an interesting problem to have, but it is, I can definitely see how it can be frustrating for miners, and we want to get your payouts out as quickly as possible. So with that in mind, I decided to make a different sort of scaling solution, which I kind of think of vertical scaling, where instead of paying out different blocks for different pools, we pay out 5 blocks for a single pool at once. And you're kind of batching these blocks together, combining the shares, combining the total block rewards, and then paying them out to all the miners.
Yeah, so just in regards to the payouts, have they sort of caught back up to current sort of payout structure? I know there was a bit of a lag there just from the hammering everything sort of took on that side of things. How sort of far away is that to catching back up into sort of real time?
Right. So I believe we started the day at maybe 80 blocks, 90 blocks back. I could be misremembering, but now we're at around 30 blocks away for the anetaPool, and the other pools are now catching up with the anetaPool. So I'm hoping by end of the day today, we should be all caught up essentially.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I think there was a little bit of a concern around minor payouts and receiving payouts. So I just want to sort of clarify that the funds and the payouts are SafePool.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that, right? So anybody can find, and we're happy to share what the holding wallet ends up being, right? What a holding wallet for the pool is. The shares are continuing to be processed, right? So even payout, as I was explaining before, there's kind of 3 categories to the architecture. The architecture where handles the miner shares is separate than the payout, is separate than the UI. And that's by design, right? Because you don't want one interjecting with the other. You don't want to hold up in handling shares. So the share processing, we've never had a problem. We handled that. And actually our miners were very surprised how low of a response time, ping times you're having through the peak, through 1.5 terahash. So the share handling is one aspect that hasn't been touched. It hasn't been tampered with. It's the processing, right? To determine, we found blocks. Some of these blocks have matured and have been rewarded to the pool and into a smart contract. It's just now accounting for, for every miners in the PPLNS mechanism, what is your share of that block? Right? And then processing it through a smart contract and the Neta exchange as well. Right, Rob?
Yeah, and I think that's very important too, because if you think about that, everything that you just explained needs to happen, right? And that all takes time, right? It's all a process. And it's not just, like a traditional mining pool where you mine, you find a block that, it's very simple. You take that block reward, you distribute it amongst miners, and, you get paid that Erg or whatever it is in your wallet. We're not that kind of mining pool, right? We're different, right? And we're processing all this through smart contracts, and all that data needs to process on the blockchain. And data is, it's intense at times, right? I mean, it's a lot of data that's being processed through this, and it takes time for those blocks to process. It's a lot easier than I guess a block that would have a lower size, right, in bytes. So as those blocks are processed, it could take 5 minutes, it could take 20 minutes, it could take an hour, right? So there's no way for us to really figure that out, right? That's just the nature of the beast. But I think it was good to kind of give that background and show that this is what's going on beyond just a traditional mining pool.
Yeah, you guys have always been about transparency as well, so I think that's really fair and open and transparent.
Yeah, and CW, I was going to add, for especially there's what we encounter too in this, balloon of users. There's a lot of new miners coming to Ergo, a lot of new miners, right? They're not familiar with how Ergo works. One of the big things that's very, very important to understand is the block, the confirmation time for a block. If you find a block at hour 0, it takes 720 confirmations for the block reward to be paid, right?
Which is 24 hours, give or take.
Yeah, give or take, right? So it's about a day. We, for a long time ago, we made a decision to shorten the amount of time to pay miners to the lowest amount without risking paying miners for orphan blocks, which we found to be 20 confirmations. So you no longer have to wait a day for the mining pool to even receive the funds. We're paying that out of pocket. So that's another thing that's very important to note, right? We were going through 400, 200, 400, gigahash second of mining pool hash rate, which kind of gives you a recurring revenue to pay miners, right? Suddenly we're getting, blocks every hour, multiple times an hour, right? So we actually had to contribute our own funds to ensure miners were going to get paid before we even got paid, right? That's the thing that a lot of people don't understand about Ergo, is that confirmation period is 720. We pay it out, which is one of the fastest of any mining pool out there, at 20 confirmations.
Yes, something to note as well. Like you said, you're taking on the risk prior. Obviously, 20 confirmations is a fair amount of time, but then you also sort of run the risk of even that block being orphaned.
Right. Exactly. There's always a risk. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's a bit of sort of a rundown of what happened sort of behind the scenes and the sort of the troubleshooting that took place. What infrastructure have you guys implemented to be able to sort of being able to scale with this such a quick or large amount of influx of hash rate?
Sure. So we changed quite a bit the architecture around the front end handling for our APIs and our content distribution. So we scaled that horizontally. We broke it up into a little bit more into both internal use, meaning that for a lot of the UI, it is primarily used by us. Secondly, also public facing for, third-party sites like miner pool stats that everybody checks. And we've been kind of going back and forth with that team as well, kind of make sure that they're using the right stats from us. And then the users, right? So there's some users that create their own code and they kind of hammer to the API to create their own statistics, which is great, right? We want that API to be available. So we changed that a little bit to prevent a single API bringing down the whole UI. Okay. Yep. Secondly, we did some optimization on our backend, our persistence. We use a distributed cluster for our persistence backend, where data, as it is, shares are shared, minor settings are made, how they're persisted, so that if there's an outage or something, that they're not lost somewhere in the interwebs. So that's been scaled and changed. We scaled up both vertically and horizontally to have more capacity. We also scaled each region. So we have right now, I believe, 7 regions that we're part of. So North America, South America, we have West Europe, we have Brazil, which is South America, but also APAC and Australia, okay, and Middle East. And so we deployed more infrastructure to those regions to be able to handle the miner influx and UI and API query influx. And we have also, because of the architecture we're using, is it's very scalable, without disclosing too much. It's able to be ramped up up very quickly. And that's the same reason why we can push out code very fast. So those 3 things, I think, helped a lot. Kirat's making a lot of improvements to the way that the API is shared and used to be a lot more lightweight as well. That I think will help for our next bump of hash rate.
Yeah, fantastic. Great to have that insight. So there's a couple of questions here in comments. Nicholas Pett has said just thanks for clarifying in regards to the payouts and things like that, but also has a question, which is a great one, I think. How often is a block orphaned on Ergo chain?
I mean, it happens all the time, right? As Vinny mentioned kind of earlier in the stream, it's a race to find that block, right? There's, thousands of miners out there. They're all submitting their shares, which is, basically a share is the solution to the problem, right?
Yep.
So that, those shares are being submitted, and it's just another miner, submitted a share just that much faster, and they found that block. So you might have submitted it at the same time, but, it's just they beat you to the race just that much quicker. And again, we're talking nanoseconds, so it's really a split-second decision on who really won that block.
It's cutthroat business, isn't it?
Well, you think about the ingenuity of it, right? You think about how cool it is, right? The proof of work kind of concept, right? That starting from Bitcoin, Ether, and Ergo, like it is a race globally. It's a global race that's happening at all the time. To your question, though, I think, Rob, I don't know what the percentage of orphan blocks are. I don't know if we have the stats on top of our head, but it's very small. It does happen once in a while. You know,
It
it's
is.
unfortunate.
It's a very
It does.
low percentage. I would say it's roughly 1%, if that. I mean, we're probably talking
Right.
decimal points at this point.
Yeah, so Vinny, you just touched on the API sort of side of things, and that Karat was sort of working on that. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit, Karat, or Mr. Cheese Enthusiast, as I like to refer to you?
Yeah, so for the API, there's like a lot of different calls that interact with our backend, and as Vinny mentioned, there are a few parts of our backend that weren't as optimized earlier. So to that point, we really started to leverage the CDN to try and help distribute our content, across the world, different regions. Besides that, I have been making a few different improvements to the subpooling API specifically. Just trying to add more stats, but also keep it lightweight, not try to do heavy calls that could impact our backend, slow things down, lock things up. So I am still working on that, but I have been making some pretty good progress.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much for that little update. I've just been going through the Ergo Explorer, just keep hitting refresh as well, and we're pretty close to block height 777217. So we're currently 14 blocks away. So that's about, give or take 28 minutes there or so, thereabouts. So we might be live when ERP27 kicks in. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, getting very close here. And that's actually real quick, just wanted to touch on that. I think that's something that's very important. As everyone knows, the block rewards will change, right, once this initiates. And there's been some questions out there whether or not the blocks that are currently within the mining pool, our mining pool, that has not been processed yet, if those blocks would apply to the reduction in the EIP27 rewards. So the answer is no. As those blocks were found, they were found under normal circumstances. They will be paid out at 63 ERG, or the representation of NETA at the 22% higher. And the EIP27 will not impact those blocks that have not been paid out yet. However, once it does initiate, then it will obviously follow standard emissions of the Ergo blockchain.
Yeah, so that's pretty close to kicking in once again as well, early July. I think it's the 4th of July or so. Just Ergo is going to follow its natural emissions, and that's to coincide with obviously the EIP27 reduction, which is about 12, it is 12 Ergo blocks. So going to be seeing a little bit of or pretty significant reduction in block rewards in the coming, almost 2 weeks now. So today and in roughly 2 weeks' time. So that sort of got a question here, Rob, from JMC, and that kind of ties into what you were just touching on in regards to the payouts of if someone was on a pool and if they did receive the rewards. So his question is, or their question is, if I was mining at 2 gigahash during the block backup and then reduced my hash rate to 1 gigahash, will I still get paid for the 2 gigahash contribution on those blocks that were found?
Yes, absolutely. So what happens is, and I need to add a disclaimer at the end, but what happens is, as you submit shares towards those blocks, if you reduce your hash rate, basically you're submitting less shares, and then in a sense it's you would receive less of a portion of that block reward.
Yeah.
So it really just offsets based on your share submission or your hash power, so to speak. However, if you're jumping pools or you're offline for several hours, jump back on the pool, you may lose your PPLNS window, which in that case you would lose your share submission, and you could potentially you'd have to start over once you jump back on the pool. But a hash rate change, no, it would not impact your rewards as far as earning them. It would just be less if you were at a lower hash rate.
Yeah, and CW, I would add like an analogy, because I'm a little bit simpler guy when it talks about the peculiarities of it. We always joke on Discord that, the rest of us, aside from Karat, we're just drawing with crayons, and sometimes we eat that, right? So think of it, PPLNS is you have a seat in a musical chair game, right? You have a seat, and you are rewarded for staying in that seat the longest period for that window, right? I get miners, they don't like the reward for one pool, they go pool hopping. That is counter to what PPLNS rewards you for, right? You leave that seat, you may lose that seat, right? So in the details, the disclaimer, it all varies, right? Because it's a very calculated algorithm. It's not something that's clear cut as far as, when and how. It depends on your peculiarities. But if you've been mining from, period 0 to when the block is found and your hash rate goes up and down, that's okay, right? But if between, period 0 and when the block's found in the PPLNS window, you kind of start mining, and then you don't like what you're seeing for whatever reason, or you want to leave, or your rig, dies, or whatever it is, and you hop somewhere else, you're going to get less rewards or no rewards, right?
Yeah.
So think about this. It's a PPLNS pool, even the subpools.
Yeah, and that's important to note that all mining pools are like this as well. It's not just something that's unique to GetBlok itself.
Yeah, it would be all PPLNS pools. There's other schematics out there, obviously, like prop and PPS, but for PPLNS, strategy, that's how it is. And, the other thing, it's really to prevent, like Vinny just said, pool hoppers, right? And also, large miners, coming in with massive hash rate, jump on the pool for a couple hours, steal all those block rewards because they're, hammering, the back end with chairs and, jump off the pool. Well, that's not how you mine with, large mining rigs on our pool. Basically it takes a little bit of time, but, as you jump in, obviously you need to meet that PPLNS window over time. So get in that seat, stay there, mine, and you won't have any problems with losing that chair.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into this question from just looking around, and it ties into the difficulty. So obviously pool hopping adjusts hash rate, etc. And obviously the difficulty adjusts with that. So the question is, the difficulty adjustment seems to be significantly lag. Yes, I understand you look back 7 epochs. However, the difficulty adjustment lags a significant amount of time. Is this something that sort of you guys are looking at, or Ergo's looking at as a whole? Have you heard on that, anything in that respect?
This is Karat's cup of tea here, but he could elaborate on this. We have conversations about it, and Cheese is the brain behind the scenes. So.
Yeah, so I believe, I'm not sure, so don't quote me on this, but I believe the difficulty adjustment into Ergo, you would need a hard fork to change it. So it might not be the easiest thing to change. And the logic I've heard about it from people like Kushti and others is that it's made more for very stable periods of hash rate, and it's kind of there to prevent hopping between different algorithms. So essentially, whenever the hash rate kind of stabilizes out a bit more, maybe after the ETH merge, never know. Once that happens, the algorithm will work a lot better. And right now, Ergo is just kind of in a weird spot a little bit in terms of, ETH merge is going to come soon. And then all this hash rate is kind of jumping on and off. The economic, the market in general is just kind of not so good right now. So lots of different things going on. But I believe that once things kind of stabilize out, the algorithm will work a lot better.
Yeah, it's important to note that or in my opinion anyway, the difficulty will run a lot more smoother once we have a lot more hash rate. So obviously at the moment, if you do jump on with say a terahash or something, there's a pretty significant adjustment in difficulty. Say if we're sitting up around, I don't know, for instance, 100 terahash or something along those lines, it does take a lot more influx of hash power to be able to sort of sway that difficulty.
Yeah, it's a percentage, right? So so unfortunately, it being a proof of work, it will take an EIP or, like Karat said, significant community decision to change it. Which we'd be happy to support the voting mechanism like we did before for EIP 27, let miners vote on what the decision should be, right? But you're right. Think about the hash rate that's in Ergo versus other like Bitcoin or ETH. It 1 terahash change is a big significant change, right? So that kind of got to take into that context.
Yeah. Once we do have a little bit more, or have a lot more, things will be a lot more smoother on that respect. In that respect, sorry. Just another little comment here from Dr. Jaffa Cowley. I'm sure I've destroyed that name, but sorry, mate. The hard life of a miner, price dumps, obviously with the markets and things like that. Then we have the EIP implementation, and then everything, ETH going proof of stake. So it's kind of like a perfect storm at the moment. It's a tough time to be a miner.
It really is. I mean, there's a lot going on. It's a lot to track right now, right? I mean, it's that much, but I look at it from two sides, right? I mean, if you look at it from a blockchain perspective and longevity of the blockchain, it makes sense, right? I mean, you can argue debate about it all day long, but I think if any time for this to happen, the time is now, because we're in a crypto winter, right? It's not the end of the world. Things are going to come back, and if the adjustments are being made now, that price increase, hopefully we have some price discovery here, and it will quickly offset those reductions. So yeah, I do think that it's bad times, but I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. And to add to that, I think that that's exactly one of the things that we're looking to do here, right? Is how can we provide more value to our miners, more profitability, and I think we've found a way to kind of bridge that gap, by working with these great projects. anetaBTC, they're offering 22% additional rewards, so I think that there's a lot of creativity that we're going to be able to provide miners and provide these projects out there, that will bridge the gap, right? And as we see bridges and all these different integrations with other blockchains, the sky's the limit, right? So I mean, maybe one day we're mining ADA, or we're mining, I mean, who knows, right? You mine Erg and you're swapping it with BTC. I mean, you know what I mean, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Possibilities are endless. It's just it takes time to get there, and it takes development. And I think that we're in a great period of time right now. During crypto winters, there's everyone says that developers are out there, they're still building, right? So as things start to come back to normal, it would be just that much better.
Yeah, just on EIP 27 as well. Obviously, it did require a super majority of miners to vote in favor of implementing the re-emission. So one thing I do have to say from the Ergo side of things is thank you to all the miners who did point their hash rate, and for you guys as well to be able to give a voice to miners with your proof of vote mechanism as well. So I think that's really important to note. We did have, I think it was 92.38%, I think, in the voting epoch, vote in favor. So pretty significant amount of hash power. So miners are putting short-term profitability aside for the longevity of the crypto economic security of the Ergo protocol. So thank you guys for all who did vote in favor. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just to add to that a little bit, we did see the same thing with proof of vote, right? So I think, as we mentioned, we did, again, with the smart contracts that Karat has developed, we've been able to provide a way for miners to mine against the mining pool, and as they submit their shares, we were distributing back tokens to them, right? And then in turn, they can use those tokens to vote yes or no. And the majority voted yes, right? So, I mean, it's just like you said, I think, the miners that have been with the blockchain, they understand what's going on. They're, kind of involved. It makes sense, right? And I think that, like I said, it's a reduction, but, a quick price discovery, we can get a nice little pump, and we'll put all this behind us.
Yeah. So we've got another question here from Just Looking Around. When will GetBlok offer the API to set up personalized solo pools?
So API is a little different. So API is currently available. We do provide, some of our API streams. We actually have some of our miners, they're creating their own apps and notification bots and things of that nature. You may be referring a little bit more to what we're calling user-based subpools. And that's, it's part one of our next phases. Obviously, I think right now we're at a point of stabilization, right? So we need to stabilize the pool. The team has done a great job getting us to where we're at, and we're at a point now where we think we got the little hiccups out of the way. We're able to put that behind us and kind of continue to push forward. So that is coming. I don't want to put a date on it, right? Because stability is everything. We want to make sure that we're providing a really robust mining system that miners can connect to. They can feel confident in their payouts, and they can feel confident with the mining pool.
Yeah, and I'll add to Rob's statement, CW, real quick.
Sure.
Our goal is to make this as user interfacing as possible, right? So we want to be able to expose it so that our vision is users can create a social experience for proof of work. That's the vision, right? And be able to do things like, I have a buddy I want to mine. We want to do it together, and we set up our own payout scheme. We want to be able to exchange tokens or emit mean tokens. We want to put that to the users to do that and provide a framework to do that. But there's a lot of things that need to happen to get to that vision. We also have the vision that to our goal to be decentralized as a smart contract mining pool is to get to the point where most of this infrastructure are run by miners. That's really hard to do right now. So I was talking earlier on the Twitter space around looking at Web3 for some of these things, right? So that's more decentralized. That's kind of the vision of where we want to go, to the point where it's not really rerun it, re-expose it. And that also addresses some of the other things like 51% attacks and things like that. But that's visionary down the road, and we're going to take a little while to get there to make sure it's right. And most importantly, we don't screw out payouts, right? That's very important for us. And I think going back to the point earlier, there's a lot of users who are concerned right now, like they're putting their electricity cost in our, as faith to us, right? So we want to make sure we keep that trust. We want to make sure we get everybody who has been mining paid. Even if we make mistakes, we make it right, as our users know. If we make mistakes in the code or anything that's wrong, we make it right, and we be able to ensure that that user gets paid. So we want to take care of that and give a couple of weeks before we start moving to the next vision, next steps.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. And also, we don't want to put too much pressure on Cheese as well. So no deadlines. We'll just say soon for
soon.
Don't want to burn him out. So I think it's a really good concept as well. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the dynamic around marketplacing and advertising, marketing SubPools, and the creation, all that sort of stuff. I think it's an unexplored sort of aspect in regards to mining. And I think it's a really big value add.
Yeah.
No, definitely agree. I think, I'm joking around in Discord today. I'd love to see, instead of a subpool, a super pool where, it's distributing all sorts of random assets, right? So, there's definitely a lot of possibilities out there. But again, I think stability is key. But, as we kind of roll out some of these future projects, I mean, whatever you can think of, as long as it's, within reason, within the blockchain, and it, there's interoperability, then I don't see why it wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, exactly. And just a shout out here to Rabid Mining. Hey, mate, thank you very much for tuning in.
Hey, bud.
So another question here in regards to sort of payments and things like that. If there's been as much traffic as we've seen, so another sort of influx of, say, 1.4 terahash or so, would the blocks be able to keep up with the new sort of payment methods that you guys have implemented?
Yeah, so with the way we've implemented the payments with batching of blocks, I've kind of made it in such a way that's like parameterized. So right now we're taking batches of 5 blocks. We could change it to 10 if our hash rate goes up big enough, we could change it to like 15, 20. I don't know if it ever have to go past that, maybe, but
Be careful
yeah,
what you wish for.
but yeah, it can be changeable, and it's very scalable, especially when there's a lot of hash rate on one pool. And another thing to point out is that I've kind of separated things in such a way that the old method where it pays out for multiple pools at a time, it's still a very useful method, and I've kept that method kind of safe so that maybe later on, if we have a lot of pools and the hash rate's a lot more spread out, we can switch back to that method instead.
Yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility there as well. That's great to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
So just another little comment here from Dr. Jaffa Kali. Reach out, tell me how to pronounce your name. I hate destroying people's names on live streams. So the crypto winter is the time to stack. So obviously you fill your wallets up in regards to sort of the market conditions and things like that. Another shout out to Meta. Hi guys, keep it this way. Will the difficulty at first be with subpools, but the subpooling is the future. So I think that's really good to see. We've sort of touched on that, and the growth I think that this can bring to Ergo, but then also even abroad if you're kind of looking to expand onto other chains. Question here from Yang. Can you explain more about how anetaBTC is wrapped and how the price is tied to Ergo? And nothing seems at all related to wrapped BYC. I'm not too sure what that's referring to. So how's the sort of, yeah, what's the ratio in regards to sort of Erg, Neta and all that sort of side of things? How's that processed on the back end?
So on the mining pool, the way that it's processed is basically, well, actually, let me hand this over to Karat. I can say it simply, we take the block reward, it's 63 ERG, that gets converted to the current exchange rate at Ergo DEX, right? So every time that block is found, confirmed, it's actually, it's finding that exchange rate and it's paying out the miners at 22% increase. But let me hand it over to Karat because it's a lot more than that, and there's definitely some novel innovation within the smart contracts that he's developed.
Yeah, so essentially we have this thing called like an emission contract, and when we set the pool up, we had anetaBTC. They decided to send 10 million NETA to this emission contract. And the way this emission contract works is that every time you give it a block reward or a set of block rewards, it takes all of that ERG, it sends the ERG amount to the anetaBTC team with the address that they specified, and that is on our UI as well, I believe. And then it emits the NETA tokens from its storage and kind of emits them at a rate of 22% more than the DEX price. Now we get the DEX price not from an API, which you never know what could happen with an API, but we get it straight from the blockchain on the liquidity pool of NETA to ERG, the biggest one, I believe. So essentially we're calculating the price within the contract. We're simulating a swap, and then we're adding 22% to the output of that swap.
I think that answers the question. It is quite straightforward once you get your head around it, but it's important to note as well that each sort of subpool can sort of determine their own tokenomics and distribution of the tokens. So it's not sort of a one glove sort of fits all sort of scenario. It's just up to each individual project and subpool to determine what they or how they wanted to make that distribution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for example, I mean, you look at we've had them on here, but look at the Comet, right? The Comet subpool. They're providing just standard ERG block rewards, but they're also providing their tokens in addition to that block reward. Where you look at Neta, they're doing a complete swap, which that erg is basically, it's being sent back to them, but they're doing a great thing with it. So 80% of that erg that is mined is going directly to their liquidity fund. And then, on top of that, the 20% that's remaining, it's going directly into development. So, that allows them to continue to build, to continue to develop on the blockchain, which is important, right? I mean, I think, we all spend a lot of time, working on these, the software. And I think, it's, it can't be all for nothing, right? So I think that, it's, not only is it providing that value to miners, but it's allowing the anetaBTC team to kind of grow, what they're about and what they can do.
Yeah, I think it's an important point, right, Rob? We were talking about this around this ecosystem that's forming in Ergo, where before you have this project, you have these pools, we're all competing, race to the bottom, lowest fees, right? Now we see this convergence of projects who add value to the ecosystem, and they can add value to the proof of work network to incentivize them to do more proof of work, right? Which is interesting, right? Which kind of enriches the strength around proof of work, and it kind of gives you in these bear markets. We'll see how far this goes, but in the bear market where just the emissions or the rewards is not sufficient to incentivize people to mine, right? So now you're thinking about doing fun things with like Comet. That was fun, but that helped us prototype the technology, right? And then now we're doing something that actually has value added. And to Rob's point, I don't know if I can emphasize that enough. It is at the exchange rate is at the time of that exchange between erg and neta. So people are worried about the price fluctuation. It is not set at one point and then it just goes lower based on the market. It is at that point. So you could go one way or the other, right? But it's always going to adjust to give you 22% extra based on that exchange at that time.
Yeah, nice little comment there as well, Vinny. I'll just like to make it clear that Vinny did say that, and he's going to have some Comet chow chows after him in regards to the value for the Comet token. So you're all on your own there, mate.
Value is what, it's the eye of the beholder, right? It's whoever you say, So if you think Comet's really valuable, good to you, keep going with that.
Yeah. It's a really fun paradigm as well, because you touched on being able to add extra incentive onto work as well. And we just sort of touched on this in a previous video I did with Armenio and Noah. And it's around providing that extra incentive for even projects to launch their initial emissions through work. I think that's really, really interesting concept, and the value add that adds to the ecosystem. And then you see projects competing with each other to try and attract hash rate. So it's a really interesting paradigm to sort of watch play out.
No, I agree. And I think, the other thing that it allows, and I think we touched on this in a previous episode as well, but, it's now, again, we're bringing new miners into the ecosystem, right? They're mining erg, they're mining Comet, they're mining neta. Now they're getting involved with the ecosystem, right? They're trying out, different DApps. They're trying, Ergo decks. They're, maybe they're working with the, Comet refundable ICO. Who knows, right? But it allows them to kind of tinker in the space. And, to Vinny's point, when you're in a bear market, I mean, let's have some fun, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to bring. We're trying to bring value. We're trying to bring fun. We're trying to bring that social engagement. And I think we're doing a great job at it, right? I think that, it's gaining a lot of attraction, and, I think there's a lot more out there that we can do. And, I keep using this saying, but, we're just getting started. We're scratching the surface. And I think that, there's a lot more that's going to come out of this. That's, just going to continue to provide more value and, bring a lot of light, not only to GetBlok and what we're doing, but, to the Ergo ecosystem as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And we're getting pretty close here, so I'll just have a quick look at what's going on here as well. I'll just do a quick refresh and see what height we're up to. We're 5 blocks away.
5 blocks, yeah.
777,217. Obviously, that's on the Explorer. I don't have my node synced at the moment, so I'm not too sure whether that's up to date. But yeah, we'll soon see that tick over. So it's pretty exciting, I guess. And while I have the browser open, let's head over to your sort of website as well. So a couple of interesting stats here. 658 miners connected. Wow. Influx of 121% over the past week.
Yeah, it's been a crazy ride. And, I think, one of the main things that we want to get across is, we greatly appreciate, the miners that kind of stuck with us through the challenges. We know that it was painful, right? I think it was painful for everyone, but I think there was a lot learned from it. That's important in itself, right? I mean, as software development is completed, and as things are launched, nothing's perfect, right? I mean, it's things that software developers face all the time, right? So it allowed us to learn. It allowed us to understand what are some of our limitations and what's needed in order to kind of improve our network and improve our back end infrastructure, so we can continue to scale and continue to grow with this mining ecosystem here.
Yeah, so you guys are sitting at around 900 gigahash currently, with a 30-day high of 1.41 terahash. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. You look at that graph right there, tells you exactly the experience, right? So it kept going until, what was it, Friday morning last week, and there was just an influx, right? So one of the big thing is, you got to think about that. This is like a moving bicycle or a motorcycle, whatever analogy you want to use, right? It's going down the highway, and we're trying to change the tires, right, and change the gears while it's moving, and you can't stop. You can't stop this, right? I can't just go in, hey guys, got to go under maintenance, let's stop everything and make some changes. We can't do that. So and so it's tricky, right? So we do have to give a lot of credit. I think Karat worked. The guy's been I think locked in that room for a couple of days. Rob, and I are, we're all East Coast in US, so it's, crypto does not have a time zone, right? It's a twilight zone. It's so late at night trying to figure this stuff out. So I appreciate everybody's patience. We are tracking. Please reach out to us on this Discord, on Telegram. You can tag us on Twitter as well. We're tracking that as well. So we're trying to do our best to make sure we connect with everyone that's having issues. Let's get through these blocks, catch up, hopefully end of today, beginning of tomorrow. And once we're caught up, if you're still having issues, please reach out. We promise we'll track it down and make it right. Yeah,
most definitely. And just a quick one here, guys. Can you pinpoint on this graph where SubPooling went live for the Comet side and then anetaBTC side?
Yeah, so if you kind of, it's hard to see, just because it's small, but if you kind of go over, keep going. Right about there, I think, was when we launched Comet. So you see, we did get a nice little peak. And then as you see that significant mountain, that's where anetaBTC started.
Yeah, it went parabolic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So on our block height, what are we now? 2 blocks away.
Almost.
Yeah, not far away now. So I'll just tick that back over as well, and we might be able to catch it live. So that's pretty cool on the live stream as well. Let's jump over to the chat and see what comments we have got going in there. I know there was a cheeky one from Rabbit, just saying something along the lines of, it sounds like Tim Bako. So yeah, it's a cheeky comment, mate. Couple of nice ones here. Luca, keep up the great work. Andy said, nice, thank you for that answer. A couple of blocks remaining. What else do we have? It's just a couple of questions around anetaBTC, that sort of side of things. There's a question here from just looking around. What does the GetBlok crew think of the Firo proof of work reduction? So they've obviously just had a hard fork. So for those who don't sort of know, that's a pretty significant one as well, because they did take a significant amount of rewards from miners and gave it to masternode operators. So there's a couple of rumblings in the mining community around that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you my opinion. Being a miner, right? I started in this journey with, as a miner. I still am mining, and I will be for a long time. I find it ironic that projects start to get their maturity from proof of work and then change to a different rewards mechanism. I get block reduction, reward reduction like Ergo is doing to prolong kind of the lifespan of a project. I get that, but to make that change and disregard the miners who stood up and secured the network for years, I think I take it the wrong way, but that's just my personal opinion again. I think projects need to really think about that when they start, 10, 20, 50 years, really what's their ethos, right? And who's going to be securing it? What is it for? So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just to add to that, I mean, I think that that's one of the great things about the Ergo blockchain, right? Because I mean, it is the majority of these, decisions are that of the miners, right? So, just like we had EIP 27, I think that, they allow the miners to kind of make the decision, and either they just support it or they don't. Where a lot of these other blockchains, miners necessarily didn't have a say, right?
Yeah, I
I mean,
think
we
that's
can,
important to note, really. Obviously, we just touched on it in regards to ERP 27 with the supermajority voting in favor. The miners ultimately have the say in what sort of goes ahead and what's accepted on the chain. And I think as a lot of projects don't have that governance model for miners, it's a foreign concept to be able to tell someone from outside of Ergo that they do have this this power, I guess you could say, in the Ergo mining Ergo.
yeah, agreed. I mean, you look at even other blockchains that are even proof of stake, right? It's all about, who holds the most coin, right? And, they have these governance systems where, you can buy your votes basically. And I just don't think that that's really a fair way, to maintain governance of a complete blockchain, especially proof of work.
Yes, so we're one block away here, guys. So 777-216.
Yeah, it's
So
217 now.
just ticked over.
There you go.
Yep.
There we
Looking at
go.
our node, yeah.
So as you
Ooh.
can see, we've got the block height there of 777-217, and on the right-hand side, we have the current reward now is 51 erg.
51 ergs.
So
We gotta
yeah,
crank up the power.
reduction there of 12 erg instantly within one block. So hopefully we see a little bit more value added in regards to the community projects and things like that to reimburse, I guess you could call it, the miners who did put away this sort of short-term profitability for the longevity of the Ergo chain.
Yep.
So that's exciting. We got to see that live. Pretty cool.
We finally got here.
It's been a long undertaking. So obviously it did start with a discussion on the Ergo forums and a lot of toing and froing, a lot of community engagement. There was the initial vote, then the actual vote, and here we are live on mainnet.
Here we go. Happened.
Yes, we are. Yeah, congrats to, the Ergo Foundation also they did, I think, as much as you can expect as far as this large ecosystem to try to educate people around what it was about and why, right? It took a little while to get, I think, the word out to everybody, but there's a reason behind it. But I'm glad that everybody who wanted to participate, they got a chance to participate in the vote.
Yeah, and who knows where your sort of proof of vote token NFTs will sort of sit. That might have some sort of uniqueness later on down the line as well. Being able to have bragging rights on saying that you sort of had a say in this implementation of the ERP.
Don't we have a sticker somewhere that says "I
Yeah,
voted"?
yeah.
27.
I was just gonna say we they're technically fungible tokens, but we created some artwork and we distributed them to all the miners that were on the pool. So who knows, that may end up in a wallet 30 years from now, and a miner may find that that wallet and earn that NFT. So who knows?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. One thing you do want to sort of touch on as well is with the subpooling offering different tokens as incentives, and the mining to an exchange. Obviously, the mining or the exchanges have a sort of implementation into their node to be able to determine what tokens they accept and what they don't in regards to sort of what's acceptable for them, because they don't want to be spammed. It's just important to note that you shouldn't you shouldn't mine to an exchange wallet. Do you guys want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. So, from a high level, two things. Miners like to mine to exchange wallets, right? It's easier, it's less transactions. You're mining directly to a wallet where you're going to finally, make your ultimate exchange either to fiat or some other coin. However, there's really, when you're mining to an exchange wallet, you're not mining your own coins. You're mining, it's going through a process, you're getting that value of the coin that you would have mined, but you're literally connecting with an exchange and they're giving you whatever they have in their liquidity. So that's one. The other thing is, within the Ergo blockchain, as we work with these projects and there's all these, tokens and NFTs and things of that nature. Those tokens, if you mine directly to an exchange, they will be burned. So you will mine to a mining pool, you'll be on for 24 hours, and you'll start seeing that you're getting remnants of Erg. That means that the fee that was used to transfer the token was sent to your wallet, but the token that went with it was lost forever. Yep. So please do not mine to exchange wallets, because we hate to say it, but unfortunately there's nothing we can do about that. That's completely out of our control. We did recommend several wallets. You can also go to ergoplatform.org. All of the recommended wallets on their list will work within our subpools. And we do highly recommend the Nautilus wallet. And if you're using mobile, you could also use the Ergo mobile wallet as well. Just to add one more thing to that, Nautilus is actually a great tool. The reason being is, if you are mining Neta, that will be the wallet that you would want to use when you interact with ergodex.io. So that, it connects directly to ErgoDex. You can exchange or swap your tokens. You could also use their Yoroi wallet, but they've had their challenges in the past. So we highly recommend using Nautilus. It will be your easiest way to mine Neta, and then do that final swap once you earn those tokens.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, you touched on the fees. Obviously, if you're mining on a different chain, there is significant fees at times. On Ergo, there is a determined fee prior to sort of the transaction being submitted, and it's a really nominal amount as well. It's what, 0.001 erg, depending on how much you want to sort of prioritize your transactions. So it's, in the whole scheme of things, it's not much.
No, not at all. And again, I think that was one of the many things that made smart pools and subpooling possible on the Ergo blockchain. Because if you tried to do what we're doing now on Ethereum, it just unfortunately it's not possible, right? Imagine gas fees, and we're making all these large high computational transactions, and we want them to go fast, right? Well, you can imagine the gas fees that we would pay to do those transactions.
Yeah, it'll be ludicrous. So I think that sums up a lot of things that we've sort of discussed, and the difficulties that or the teething problems that you had with the influx of hash rate. So onto something a little bit more positive. What's sort of next for the subpooling?
So as I mentioned, I think, first phase is stability, right? So we want to get our, everything stabilized, ensure that there's no bugs, there's no glitches, everything is working, back end, front end, and that, we're providing that tremendous experience to our users. Following that, we'll be working a little bit more on what I would call improvements to our user interface or a dashboard. Adding more stats, and also isolating some of the stats that are currently being displayed. So right now, if you go to the pool, the hash rates combined, that, the blocks table is combined. So Karat has been, trying to get to it, but it will be our next phase. He'll be working on the API streams, separating those out. That way we can provide, more consistent stats to the miners.
Yeah, I think that's really important. There's a nice little comment here that just made me have a little chuckle from Rabid Mining. Say you mined 4,000 netta and you received an out of gas. Please send more to the wallet on ETH. It's little tongue-in-cheek comment there. Made me have a good little giggle. So thank you very much for that, mate. I did watch your recent video as well, and I just want to sort of touch on the emissions for Ergo. So obviously, the initial emission reduction started in January of this year, sorry. So that was the first initial 3 ERG reduction for miners, and that's sort of come subsequently in March, and then the next one now is going to be in the start of July, sorry. So yeah, we've had a couple of, I think they're called fiftenings thereabouts. We're not quite halvings or anything like that, but it's around a fifthening thereabouts. So yeah.
Yeah, and that was obviously always intended. That has nothing to do, obviously with EIP 27, that's separate. That reduction is 3 ERG, and it happens roughly every 90 days, let's say. And again, all based on block times, right? So it's based on block height, and it may happen. The average block time is 2 minutes, but sometimes that takes a little bit longer. So not a perfect science, but that's kind of how that goes, and it will continue to go. Obviously until the emissions have been completely depleted. Now you can look at this, I think it's Ergo Watch or something like that. There's a website out there where you can track emissions, so it gives you visibility as to how that will change over time.
Yeah, ergo.watch. If you want to head over there and just click through to the emission side of things, they do have an update emission schedule with taking into account EIP 27 reduction. If you guys have any more questions, by all means, shoot them through into the chat. Depending on how many come through, we might sort of wrap this up in the next little while. Is there anything you guys want to sort of touch on?
No, I mean, I think we've got it pretty well covered. I think, the main point here is I think we started off with, we're all about transparency, visibility. So, we hope that this, provided just that. Again, if there's any further questions, please, feel free, jump into one of our channels. You can go to Twitter, tag us there. Or if you want to DM us directly, you don't want to, talk about it in front of everyone. I mean, we're here, we're live people. We're, here to answer your questions. So, as we kind of go through, this phase, we want to make sure that everyone's questions answered and that you're not forgotten. So,
yeah, Vinny, there's a question here that you might be able to answer. Just in regards to the regional sort of side of things, how much of the hash rate is coming from India or the subcontinent? Is that something that you can determine?
Yeah, so I do track that, and it's interesting because it depends on the time of day. I would say, ironically, and it's probably a reason for this, East US is our most busy region. Now, that could be because a lot of miners are in the US, but a lot of miners could be using VPNs as well, right? They could be terminating to the US point of presence. So it is, I would say that's the region that's the busiest. From an APAC perspective, I see here there's a lot of access coming out of like Poland, UK, Russia. There's, probably a fifth of the US traffic's coming from India. I would say, in order of kind of precedence, let's say United States, North America, including Canada, the UK, Western Europe is very busy. And then ironically, Australia is actually pretty busy as well. And so, but it depends what time of day, the traffic. But yeah, from a miner perspective, I would say our EU West and US East are the two busiest stratum regions that we have today. We do plan on going to India. We had a little problem when we first launched to India. The cloud provider we're using there just didn't have capacity. And so we kind of waited and waited, and then we kind of got launched to this. We are going to be launching most likely either east or west or maybe central India for those in mining from India. But I think they have pretty low ping rates to either APAC, which is Singapore, I believe, or even EU West. But tell us if you come across where you're mining to our global ergo.getblok.io address and you're having really high ping rates, tell us what region you're from. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, that answered their question. They just had a little reply here saying awesome. Just like to say thanks as well. Often Australians sort of forgotten about in regards to sort of this sort of side of things, and we have horrible ping times. And I think prior to sort of you guys spinning up the Australian one, my ping time was around 200 or so milliseconds, and now it's hovering around 10 thereabouts. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
No worries, our pleasure.
All right, guys, any more questions? If not, we might wrap this up. It's been another great chat. So I think we covered a lot of things. Obviously, the little sort of hiccups that you guys have had along the way, how you've sort of mitigated that moving forward, how you've rectified it. And yeah, it's really exciting to watch.
Thank you.
Agreed.
All right, guys. All right, well, let's wrap this up. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. It's been another sort of fun episode. Thanks to Rob, Vinny, and Karat from the GetBlok team. It's been a pleasure hosting you guys again.
Thanks, EW. Take care. Have a good one. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
No worries, guys. Take care and have a great day. Have a good one.